Malcolm X was released in 1992 and is directed by Spike Lee and stars Denzel Washington as the iconic Malcolm X. In this movie chronicles Malcolm X's life from being a young man to up to when he was a political activist and his eventual death. And the reason I wanted to go back and watch this movie is because it's been on my watch list for a long time, mainly because of Denzel, and it's a big performance from him that I hadn't seen before, along with it being Spike Lee. So I actually watched it a couple weeks ago before I watched Lee's new movie, The Five Bloods. And I can honestly say that right after Do the Right Thing, it's probably my favorite Spike Lee movie I've seen. Now this movie is 3.5 hours long, so it does have quite a bit of length on it, but it's also structured in a very effective way, kind of the same way that Goodfellas was. Not the same type of content, of course, because saying like Henry Hill is an equivalent to Malcolm X would be incredibly disrespectful and wrong. But it's kind of chronicled in the same way where it kind of has this rhythm to it going throughout a significant portion of Malcolm X's life, where it starts off with him being a young man and kind of how he didn't really have much of a purpose in life, living in Harlem at the time, and eventually getting to the point where he does rob a couple houses with his friends, gets arrested, goes to jail, and then of course when he's in jail he converts to Islam, and then he's part of the State of Islam for many years after that, and serves directly under the Elijah Muhammad, who was the leader of the State of Islam at the time in the United States. And it explains how his interactions with them became kind of volatile, why he left the state, and how he became his own political activist for himself and the purpose behind it. Now, another thing I want to go over is that this movie is very informative. I'm sure that not everything is 100% accurate. I've looked up a couple articles and stuff, but for the most part, it seems like it's a very accurate movie, and it's a good movie to go out and watch if you want to learn about Malcolm X's life, because in my experience with the education system within the United States, never really learned a lot about Malcolm X. Their main thing about him was that he was meaner about civil rights, and that's really it. I didn't know till a couple of years ago that he converted to Islam. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know about him that you learn in this movie that I think it is actually important to watch this movie. So I think that in that aspect I can really highly recommend this movie. And then the movie itself, I think Spike Lee does a fantastic job. I think he does a great job directing. He has that energy that his earlier movies had, and some of his later movies, like with Black Klansman, has, where it's just that palpable energy where you can feel stuff moving on screen and everything, and it's very entertaining to watch. It's the energy from Do the Right Thing is there, but it's a little bit more measured because it's actually about a real person. And I think Spike Lee does an amazing job directing this movie. I think that Denzel does an incredible job as Malcolm X. This is possibly his best performance I've ever seen. I've seen a good dozen or so of his other movies, and I think that this is my favorite performance of his. I think he's phenomenal in this. I really don't have anything bad to say about any of the acting, especially when it comes to Denzel as the lead, because it's pretty much pitch perfect. And I really like the look of this movie, especially the costume design, which of course it was actually done by Ruth E. Carter, who is a phenomenal costume designer, and you can see why in this too. Because I loved the look of the suits that they had throughout the movie, and I think that was done very, very well too. Ruth's work pops off the screen in most of the movies she's done. She won an Oscar for doing Black Panther, and of course that costume design was very, very intricate and very, very interesting to look at. So you can see that talent has always been there, of course. Now, like I said at the beginning, this is a 3.5 hour long movie. And at times you do feel that. I think that during the second act especially, it doesn't have the same amount of energy that the first act does when it gets to certain beats within the story. So parts of it, you can feel that pace slowing down a little bit. Some parts aren't as quiet, as interesting sitting through it, but it does regain itself from that with the third act and everything, and majority of the second act is really, really good. It's just a few key scenes that probably could have been trimmed or maybe even cut, but for the most part they do work really well in the movie. They just slow down the pace a little bit. But this is definitely an interesting movie to watch and talk about, because you can tell that there's real passion behind it, and then there's a lot of care put into the depiction of Malcolm X, and he's not depicted as a saint. It shows his more negative qualities and even things that he said within his own teachings that he regretted later on, and that he said he didn't believe in anymore, with segregating black and white people. That when he left the State of Islam, he said he didn't believe in that anymore because he realized that everybody's the same. It is a very political movie, obviously, because it's about a very politically active person, and I think that it's a good movie to watch right now. I think it's one that I would highly recommend with today's climate and everything that's going on. I do think this is a really well done movie. I think that some of the pacing's a little slow and everything, but other than that, this movie has a certain energy to it that makes it very, very entertaining to watch. Denzel's amazing in this movie, and I don't really know how to rate this movie because I have it sitting between two ratings, and if its pacing was just slightly better, I would easily give it a 9.5. But to be safe, I guess for now, I'm gonna rate Malcolm X a 9.0 out of 10. Now, have you guys seen Malcolm X? Let me know, and I'll be back with another video.